Good evening, folks. It is 10:45 essentially on June the 8th, 2022. What I want to do, I'm actually starting. This is the first video in a series on how to begin mining. It's June of 2022. The mining game has been really happening in earnest for years. And what I want to do with this channel is for all of those folks that worry that they're too late to the party. I want to go through exactly what I'm doing in order to answer the question, is it too late to get into mining? And so through this channel, you're going to see whether or not it is too late, especially with a few of the first video series that I'm going to be doing. Okay. So when I got in, I had zero experience when it came to building a computer. I actually started purchasing the components to what I thought would be my first build in late April, and I didn't actually get started mining until the 30th of May. And so I lost out on quite a lot of time because I didn't know exactly what to do when it comes to building a computer. And so this first video is going to be just looking at the what I consider kind of the heart of the system, and that is answering the question, what is a good motherboard for mining? And what do I need to look for when it comes to choosing a motherboard? Now, there are a lot of videos out there that talk through what do you do, the full build, but I want to break it down into components. I want to break it down into each individual part. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at just the motherboard and the key pieces to a motherboard. Okay, so we're going to take a look here at BioStar. So BioStar is largely, at least in my opinion now, after having done this for a about 2 months now, the best motherboards you can go for. I think they're generally available. And they're good motherboards. The one thing though that I think sets BioStar apart, at least in my opinion, is that they have fantastic uh, specs online. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go right here. We're going to go to products and then we're going to crypto mining. Okay, and so it gives us exactly what we need to start mining. Okay, so the motherboards for mining, you can go through here. I have two different motherboards. I have the TB 250 BTC Pro, and I have the TB 590 BTC. So what we're going to do is we're just going to open up both of these. We might not go into both of these, but we also might. So this is the one that I just recently built. Okay. The TZ 590 BTC. And you can see some really great images of the motherboard here. Okay. And so I'm going to go over some of the key elements and what I was looking for and some of the things that I think would be really helpful for you. Okay. So it supports 10th and 11th generation Intel Core processor. Now, this is going to be important. Okay. When we think about the type of processor we're going to need in order to get the motherboard to cut on. This, for me, when I'm looking at this, doesn't necessarily say anything. Now, this is important. The 4DIMM DDR4 3600, all of these, this is your memory, okay? Supports 8 PCIe 3.0 slot, supports 1 PCIe 4.0 slot, and it supports an HDMI connector. Okay. So when we're looking at a motherboard, when we're looking at any motherboard, really what we want to see is we want to see a couple of things. So let's go here to this photo. Okay, so we want to know really the right here, the processor, right? We know that we have to have a processor and we know that we have to have RAM, okay, or memory. So these two things are important. And the exact type tells us right here. Now, when it comes to mining, the other thing that I think is really important is to know how many PCIe slots. And that's what these 9 things are. You can see where my cursor is 1 and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so it actually has 7. I miscounted. does say there are 8 PCIe slots. I'm not seeing the 8th one, but maybe I'm just missing it. I only have one GPU currently on this particular miner, this motherboard. Now, so when we're seeing here and we see that this supports a 10th in a generation Intel Core processor, what does that mean? Now, one of the really cool things is that you can go through here. Let's say there's 8 right here. I'm not seeing 8. Okay, but what it tells us, right? We have the overview, specifications, we can go through all that, but then when we go to the CPU support, so the CPU support is this Intel Core processor, right? Now, a couple of mistakes that I made. This socket is important, okay? We absolutely need to know what type of socket we're going to be looking for, okay? This tells us the type of processor that we're going to be looking for, the processor model, and the frequency, okay? And then the GPU frequency. So literally everything that it tells us is right here. And this is one of the reasons why I like BioStar so much, is because it tells us the socket, the processor, etc. Now, what you can do is you can quite literally go to Amazon and you can search for exactly what you're looking for. So you can go in and search for a socket, the particular processor, the processor model, the frequency, and the GPU frequency. So you can go search these. You can keep going down. Here's your i7s, here's your i5s, i3s. And so you can go through and quite literally find the exact processor that you're looking for. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do just that. Okay, so we're going to go through and we're going to go to Amazon. We're going to put in a 1200 socket, Intel Core. And then there we go. So 10th gen LGA 1200 socket. Okay, so this is exactly what we're looking for. So let's just pick this one. Okay, so this is, let's see if this is going to work for us. So literally everything that it says is right here. So this is an i7. And so then we can go through and we can find our i7s. Okay. Then we know that it's a 1200 LGA. So this is the socket. So we know that the LGA is right there. Of course, and then let's look at this. So it's a 10700. Okay. So this is looking good so far. 10700F i7. So 1200, 10700F right here. And then we can go down up to 4.8 gigahertz. So we can see 2.9 gigahertz. I'm curious if it's going to tell us. I'm not seeing a 4.8 anywhere. But that's how you search, right? So you go in and you search and then you find specs that match this exact. Oh, there it is, CPU 2.9. Okay, so let's go back to that 2.9. Okay, so this GPU would, or CPU would work for this CPU would work. Okay, and so we know that this CPU works with this motherboard, and that's how you do it. Okay, you go through and you find, same thing for memory support. You would go and you would find that particular brand. Now let's say you don't want this particular motherboard. You can go to the other one that I have, which is the TB250 BTC Pro, right? You would just do the same thing, specifications. Or let's just go to CPU support. Now, one of the things we notice immediately is that there's a different socket. Okay, it's a different socket. And so this wouldn't even fit, right? Because this is an LGA 1200. Okay, and so we want to make sure that we get the right socket for the right motherboard. This is a really easy mistake that you can make, is getting the wrong CPU for your motherboard. And, some people try to force them when the sockets don't work, not realizing that it's an incorrect socket. Now, one of the first mistakes I made was that I picked up just the first LGA 1151 processor that I found on Amazon. Ended up not being compatible with the motherboard. And so when I would try to start my rig, it would just automatically cut off. It wouldn't even boot. And so that was one of the keys that I needed to realize for kind of understanding how to build a computer. Again, no computer building experience. And so that's what ended up happening. Okay, so when I'm looking at building a motherboard or a computer or a rig, this is the first thing that I'm going to look at. I'm going to look at the motherboard that I'm going to buy, and then the CPU support and the memory support. And then if I can do that, then I'm well on my way to building my first rig. Okay, and so this is exactly what I do. Now, I hope this video was useful. Again, this is going to be a series in which I talk a lot about how to correctly build your mining rig, especially if you don't have any experience in doing it. I hope you found this video useful. Please feel free to like and subscribe to the video, comment down below. I'm looking forward to hearing from each of you. Take care.